friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Fantastic Friends. So I've stamped all the images I'll be using on some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink. And I'm going to be coloring with my Copic markers. And today's card is actually going to be a little bit different because I'm going to be doing a monochromatic card. I believe this is the first time I've ever done a card like this. I've been crafting for a lot of years, but I can't remember ever doing one before. But this is our current Lawn Fanatics challenge, so I'm going to dive right in here, and I'm going to be using some really desaturated blue-violet shades. So just in case you weren't aware of what a monochromatic card is, it just means that the entire card is all in one color palette. So I went ahead with these tones here. I'm using BG quadruple 0, BV20, BV23, and BV25. And like I said, these BV shades, they're blue violets that are really desaturated, which means that they have a lot of a gray tone to them. So it's going to run the range between like a gray to like a purplish shade into the blue of the blue violet with that BG quadruple 0. I recently used this combo on a different card for just some small elements, and I really fell in love with the combo. So when this challenge came up, I thought I'm going to explore this combo again for an entire card. So I'm doing all of these bats exactly the same, starting with the BV25 in the shaded areas. This is mainly down their backs or the undersides of their wings, any place where a wing is overlapping another wing or the rest of the body. And then I'm going to blend out the BV25 with the BV23, and then I'll use the BV20, and then the BG quadruple 0 is going to help me fade from the blue violets into like just the blue undertone. And it just gives them like this otherworldly, spooky look that I just fell in love with, and I think is just stunning and perfect for bats and spiders and a night sky. So I'm just going to continue coloring these guys and flipping their shadows to be, you know, where they would normally fall on the body, but I still like to keep the face nice and highlighted no matter where the light source is. I'm going to have a nice big full moon on this scene, so it would be pretty bright anyway, but I really want there to be a nice light area on their faces so that you can see all of their adorable features. The insides of the ears I also wanted to be a little bit lighter, so I'm only using the BV20 and then the BG quadruple 0 for those. So I'm moving on to my bat couple, and again just changing the shadows to be where they would wrap around each other, where the one wing is overlapping the other bat's body, that would cast a shadow. So other than that, I'm doing it almost the same as the single bat that's upside down, but just with the addition of the extra bat and how that would, you know, relay to the shadows around them. I also tried to keep the highlight on the lower part of their wings and the shadow up toward the top, because the top is where most of the bone structure is, so it would naturally be darker, whereas the thinner part that is just skin would reflect more light and be a little bit more translucent. So that's why I'm putting the highlight at the bottom of the wings on all of these guys. I'm also coloring right over the fangs because it was just too hard to color around them. So I'm going to go back and add some white to those later on. So one of the tricks to doing a monochromatic card is to pick a color where you can run an entire range from really dark to really light, so that all of your images don't look exactly the same, but they're still in that same color palette. So I added in the BV29, which is going to be my darkest in this entire scene, for my spiders, because I wanted them to have some contrast and look different from the bats, but still match with the scene, like I said. So I blended out the BV29 with the BV25, and then I'm skipping right down to the BV20 for the face and the center of the body, because again, I didn't want their eyes and their mouths to get lost, especially since they're so small. I wanted you to really be able to see those. And then for the tree, to make that look a little bit different from the bats and the spiders, I'm going to switch to the lightest 3 shades. So I'm using the BV23 on the underside of the branches, and then blending up with the BV20. And then at the very top, where the light from the moon would be hitting it and causing it to glow, I am going to put that BG quadruple 0. And then I have the leaves. The leaves were the trickiest part. I wasn't sure what direction I wanted to go in, but I ended up deciding to do more of the blue tone. So I started with the BV20 and then blended out with BG 000, which is just slightly darker than the BG quadruple 0. And then I'm going to go back in with a little bit more of that BV20 to create some more shadow. And then I'm going to take the BV25 and add some detail to my tree branches by just doing some little swirls and some lines across them. Then I'm going to take a white gel pen and just go over the fangs of the bats and try to be really careful because it is such a small little area to color in, but it'll just bring those little fangs back to being white. And then I'm going to take a black Sakura Jelly Roll pen and I'll get that started off to the side. And then I'm going to go over the eyes of the 2 bats with their eyes open, and then also my spiders. And on that first spider, the eye got a little bit off center because it's such a small little space to go over. But I wanted to show you that you can use a sand eraser to remove that. You just gently sand that ink away, and then I can put them back in again. And that just makes them nice and bright and shiny. Then I'm going to take all of the matching dies and trim all of these images out. Then I'm going to take the moon mask from the new Nighttime Sky stencil, and I'm going to add some removable adhesive on the back with a tape runner. Just put enough of that on there so that that will stick down nice and tight, and it really did hold really well. I'm adding that to a piece of Bristol Smooth Surface cardstock in the top left corner, and then I'm going to start adding in some Distress Oxide ink. The first shade that I'm using is Salvage Patina, so this is going to represent that BG quadruple 0 in the coloring, and I'm going to place that all around this panel, but I'm staying away from the edge of that mask stencil because I want to add just one layer of that ink at the very end around that moon, so it'll be nice and soft and it won't get too heavy-handed around there, so it'll look like the moon is glowing. So I'm just going to stay away from the edge of that for now. Then I'm going to bring in my next shade, which is Shaded Lilac. This is a very pale purple, and I'm going to bring that in from all 4 corners, and then I'll bring it up much further down on the bottom of the card since we have more space to cover down there. So this is kind of representing the BV20, BV22. So I'm basically working my way from the lightest shade in my Copics that I used to the darkest. So I'm adding that, and then I'm going to go back to my first ink blending tool and just smooth the transition a bit. I like to do that between each step usually. Next up is Hickory Smoke, and this is going to help those shades look like the desaturated colors that I used. So it's going to just add a layer of desaturation on top of that purple especially, but also into the blue a bit as I continue to blend them back out together. I lost a little bit too much of the purple on that pass, so I'm going to go back to my shaded lilac and add that in and just bring that color back to life again. So it's just like a process working back and forth, especially when you're using shades that aren't like the typical ones that would normally blend together. You know, I'm kind of creating my own unique night sky that I've never really seen done before, so it's just a little bit of trial and error. And then I'm going to bring in my last shade, which is Black Soot, and I'm going to be very careful where I place this and how hard I lay it down. I want to be very soft with my coverage because you can get really heavy-handed, especially me, with the dark shades really fast, and I really just want it to be on the edges to help everything else really pop. So I'm working my way back down again. This time I'm going to skip the hickory smoke. I felt like the gray was represented enough in that background. What I really needed was more of the purple and the blue. So I'm going to just go back to that and then the salvage patina. And this time I'm going to fill in that space around the moon. But having just one layer of that ink around the moon is going to just help everything look nice and soft there. And then I just added a touch more of that black soot on the one edge where it felt like it wasn't quite dark enough. And then I just blended back down one last time, and then I was ready to add some splatter detail. So I'm putting some of that black soot ink onto an acrylic block, adding some water to it, and then I'm going to splatter this on the background, and I'm still keeping that mask in place because I don't want any of the black getting on the moon. So I just did that all over the background, so I have some different size droplets, and then I also wanted to do some white splatters, and I decided to grab my Gansai Tambi Starry Colors because there's this nice pearlized shade in there that I thought would be pretty. It'll add some nice glow to the scene as well. So I'm going to splatter that all over the background as well. And then I'm going to set this panel aside to dry completely before I even try to remove that mask. But once I can just peel that off, and you can see that my moon is perfectly white inside. I'm going to grab my Salvage Patina ink blending tool and just add a little bit of color to the center of the moon, just very soft. I just wanted it to be a little bit hazy. And then I'm going to take the other part of the nighttime sky stencil, and I'm going to do the larger size craters, and I'm going to add more Salvage Patina Distress Oxide ink over top of that to get those in all the little grooves so you can see the craters in the moon. You could also use the smaller size if you prefer, but I decided to do the larger ones. And then I'm grabbing the Hickory Smoke ink blending tool, and without inking that up again, I'm going to add a little bit of that over top of the blue just so it softens it a bit and it's a little bit more desaturated like the rest of the scene. So there you can see how that's looking so far with that little bit of shimmer in the background. So next I'm going to work on my sentiment, and I'm going to take the Happy Halloween sentiment from Fantastic Friends and stamp that out in my Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink again. And I'm going to stamp that out twice, and I'm just using the rest of that scrap of white cardstock that I die cut the images out of. While I've got my Misty out, I'm also going to do an insert for the inside of my card, and I'm just stamping in that same jet black ink on white cardstock, and I'm doing another bat and the moth and have a fantastic day. And now I want to color in this sentiment to match the coloring that I did on the card. I'm going to start with the darkest shade that I used, which was the BV29, because this is going to go down toward the bottom of the scene, so I wanted the colors to be nice and dark so they really anchor the bottom of the scene, especially since there's no ground in this scene. It's just all going to be in the sky. So having those darker colors just adds some weightiness to the sentiment. Then I'm going to blend that out with BV25, just working my way up the letters and just going a little bit at a time and about the same on each one. So I'm doing about a quarter of the letter with each shade. So next I'm going to use the BV23 and take that up almost all the way to the top. Just making sure to blend over the edge of the previous color so I have a nice smooth blend. It's going to give me this nice ombre look on all of these letters. And then for the last color, I decided to jump to the BG 000, which is the one that I used on the leaves on the trees. It's just a slightly brighter blue. It's still very, very pale, but just slightly brighter. So it's going to just add a little bit of pop to the top of those letters. So I'm going to go all the way across, finishing up these words, and then I'm going to grab my everyday sentiment banners, and I'm going to use the second largest die in that set, and I will just place that over the sentiment so I can make sure it's in perfect position, and then tape that down with a little bit of Post-it tape and run that through my die cutting machine. So now I'm ready to start assembling, and the first thing I'm going to do is take the insert piece, and by the way, I die cut both the focal panel and the insert using the outside in stitch rectangle stackables. So I'm going to glue that to the inside of a black licorice card base that I scored and folded to a standard A2 size card, so it's 4 1/4 wide by 5 1/2 tall. And then I'll take the focal panel and I'm going to glue that to the front of the card, just making sure that I have even borders all the way around, and then I will press that down into place. I've added foam tape to the back of my sentiment banner and all of my images, and I'm going to start with the sentiment banner down at the bottom because I want to make sure that I have enough room for that at the end. I don't want to run out of space. And then I'm going to work on my larger tree, which is going to come in from the right hand side to go right across the moon. So right beneath that, I'm going to have my hanging bat couple, and then also the spider that is spinning its web and hanging down. So I cut down a very thin piece of foam tape for that, and then I'm going to just trim off a tiny bit at the top because I wanted that string to be just a little bit shorter. So I'm just making sure that that is straight up and down, and I want my spider to be just above the 2 L's in Halloween. Then I'm going to take my shorter branch and have that come in from the left hand side, and I'm placing pretty much everything down super gently at this point because I didn't want to risk tearing up the paper if I decided to move it. So this one I am going to move a little bit more to the inner part of the branch and then have the spider on the outer part of the branch, which is opposite of the other branch. Then I'm going to take the bat with its wings spread wide and add that at the top, almost the center of the card, just slightly more to the right. And then the one with its wings down flying will go to the left of that, both of those overlapping the moon, and then I'll press those all down into place. And then of course I wanted to add a bit of glitter, so I'm going to add just a little bit to each of the leaves, right at the base of the leaf where it connects to the branch. And then I also decided to add some to the outer edge of the moon to give that a little bit of glow, since none of the pearlized shimmer from the Gansai Tambi Starry Colors overlaps the moon. So I also wanted it to have like a little bit of shine to it. So I'm just going right around the outer edge, placing a thin line and then kind of smearing that out with the nib as far as I want it to go. And I mainly did it down the left side. I didn't bring it the whole way across to the right. So that is going to finish this one off. I really love how this color palette turned out. I hope you guys like it too. There's a look at all of that shimmer and another peek at the inside. If you did enjoy it, please be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, leave me a comment, ring the notification bell. Any interaction helps so much with the YouTube algorithm, and I really appreciate all of the support. If you're interested in any of these products, I'll have everything listed and linked for you in the description bar below, and if you'd like to keep watching, here are 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy. So thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you all have an absolutely amazing day. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.